All right, welcome to all of you. We're still early in this webinar, so just give us a few minutes. We will start again at 4 p.m. Hong Kong, Singapore. So stay with us and we'll get started in just a few minutes. All right, for those who are just joining us, thank you again for joining this webinar. We are going to be starting at 4 p.m. Hong Kong, Singapore. So we still have a few more minutes. You can stay with us, enjoying watching us for now until we get started. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Thank you. Okay, for those who are just arriving in this webinar, thank you again for being with us today. We're just going to wait another 2 minutes until most of the people are here, and then we'll get started. Feel free in the meantime to introduce yourself in the chat if you want to. You can tell us who you are and you leave your contact details, and then we'll get again started at 4 p.m. Hong Kong, Singapore. All right. Thank you very much for again joining us for this new webinar organized by the Global Supply Chain Council. My name is Max Henry. I'm going to be one of the hosts. I'm the founder of this organization. So as you know, we've been very interested in the what's happening around generative AI, more specifically ChatGPT, Bard, and the other models which are coming now. 6 months ago, most of us didn't know what ChatGPT was, and I think the last few months has been very exciting for a lot of us in terms of trying and testing that technology. So as you know, we are organizing a number of events on supply chain, from end-to-end supply chain, focusing on all this new technology. And so we wanted to, again, bring a couple of panelists to actually discuss what's happening currently in the market, what is going to be the impact potentially of that technology on the supply chain organization. And we're going to talk about all of that today and much more. So again, I want to remind all of you that this can be an interactive session. You can ask at any time questions using the Q&A button located at the bottom of the screen. So if you have a question either during the presentation or during the panel discussion, you can then push that button and write your question, and we will take all those questions during the Q&A towards the end. Again, please do not use a chat to ask your question because it might get lost in the over chat. So make sure to use again the Q&A. So this session is going to last for about 55 minutes. We will finish 5 minutes before the end of the hour. And we will have first presentation done by Etienne Charlier, followed by a quick poll just to understand what you guys are doing with this technology. And then we'll then start using some of the questions that we have prepared. And then, of course, we will prioritize your questions as they come. So before I let Etienne presenting, I'd like maybe to get each of you to introduce themselves to the audience. So if you could tell us who you are, what you do, and just a very quick introduction. Maybe we're starting with you, Etienne.
Okay. Yes, my first touch with deep learning was actually quite early in the late 80s as a young engineer doing deep learning on silicon at that time. But then I moved on other things in technology, mainly in China, high tech, and also some industrial sourcing. But then the last few years, I rediscovered machine learning, deep learning, all those amazing tools of AI. And I'm currently active in an organization called DIY AI, whose focus is assisting organizations outside of the IT industry to figure out what to do with the tools, implement them, launch them, skill up their teams, and so on, in a way that is more independent.
Okay, thank you very much, Etienne. Okay, I'm moving on maybe to Mike. Hi, Mike, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Max. So this is Mike, and I'm a CEO and founder of K1 Company. So basically, we do digital transformations for the corporate. And for the last 5 years, so basically, we've heavily focused on automations, creating intelligent automations for the customers. And right now, we are actually looking into analytics space, helping customers to generate different kind of analytics insights using different kind of AI, most of the important generative AI for our customers. So thanks for having me, Max.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, moving on to Julien. Hi, Julien, go ahead.
Hi, Julien. I'm French. I've been 20 years in supply chain analytics and modeling. I'm the founder of SimCell, which is a tool that helps decision-making based on simulation and AI. And I've been around in Asia at least for 18 years.
Okay, and last but not least, Chris. Hi, Chris, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, hi everyone. So Chris Andrews, based out of London with EY. I spent the last 20 years working in supply chain with big multinational companies, focuses on digital. So all of the systems that you will know and love in planning, logistics, procurement, and now more recently getting into AI and decision intelligence. So great to be here.
Thank you very much again for being with us. For some of you who are just joining again, I want to remind you again that this is going to be an interactive session. Feel free to ask any question using the Q&A button located at the bottom of the screen. You can ask questions during the presentation at any time until we wrap up in just 50 minutes from now. Okay, so let's hear from Etienne Charlier, who has a very quick presentation just to set the scene and give us an overview of what the technology is all about. So welcome, Etienne, go ahead.
Thank you. Can you see the screen now?
Yeah, all good, yeah. Okay,
very good. What I will cover quickly is 3 points. First, generative AI compared to the rest of AI. What is it and what we're going to talk about it and not talk about it. Then I go in more details about the capabilities of generative AI and the strength and why this is so effective and so amazing. And then I'll focus on 2 applications that I believe are quite interesting and go beyond just putting the system online. If we look at, of course, AI means a lot of different things, and science fiction, big ideas, a lot of hype going on, particularly in the trade media for supply chain. The amount of hype on AI is quite amazing. But what, of course, we want to focus on is on those products and services that use AI technologies, on the techniques and the tools that are used to build the products, and on the advanced research that are available today and still ongoing in those sectors. Now, when we go quickly, I like to summarize the capabilities of AI in 4 main capabilities. The first one is everything to do with big data, how to extract information from large sets of data. What you demand forecasting and all sorts of forecasting, whether you're in marketing and do things like propensity to buy of a particular customer or a particular group of customers, or things like an application that you have on your mobile phone that allow an insurance company to understand what kind of driver you are. whether you're distracted, you're aggressive driver, and these kind of things. These are all things that are used quite effectively. A second capability is making sense out of images and videos, and that's what we call computer vision. So for instance, this is one of the applications where you have a movie, then you can create a virtual skeleton of the people, and you have all sorts of other applications. Then, especially recently, we have strong capabilities for extract meaning out of text. And this is somehow related to generative AI also. So natural language processing. As a human, it's very obvious that Seattle is a city and Port Allen are the same person. But for the computer, until very recently, it was really hard to figure that out. And now with some of the tools of AI, we can do that. And then we come to generative AI, called Generative, because it's creating new content. It can create images. You may have played with things with Stable Diffusion or Midjourney or these tools. You describe a picture and it gives you that picture. And if you are a little skilled in how to write the prompt or the text, you can have nice pictures. And then obviously the most, the highest candidate and the star of generative AI, ChatGPT and related. So here I just ask, give me the top 10 cities in the world by density, population density. Then it's okay, nice, but I'm not a text person. I like graphics. So give me an horizontal bar and it gives me that bar. It doesn't give it all the time, but because you don't get the same answer all the time, as you know. And then I say, okay, nice, but this is just some kind of text using a fun font. Give me the Python code needed to create the same plot, and then give me some code. And we don't have to trust ChatGPT, so let's check it. Copy the code and dump it into a Jupyter notebook, which is a way of running Python code. And here we are. The code works perfectly. Okay, amazing. What is this ChatGPT thing? So, and of course, when you see that, we start to think that this is amazing. Like this is a general intelligent thing, but of course, unfortunately or fortunately, it's not. So ChatGPT is essentially based on a language model. And the language model is a computer model that is trained to predict the word that has the highest chance of being the next word in the sentence. So you give it text, and it will predict what should be the next word. And then you can, again, do another word, another word, another word, and you can create long text. But it's essentially trained to generate one word that is naturally following as a first one. For instance, the sky is, and then blue could be potential, dark could be, but smelly or happy would not be the word that would be selected. Now, that's already existing for quite a while. And what we have recently is that there's a second thing, is those models were generating quite decent text, but not really natural text. So there was another thing, is the same models, in particular ChatGPT, was trained with what you call human feedback in order to generate text that feel natural for us. So the model generate a lot of sentences, and then humans check that, say, oh, that one I like, that one I don't like. It was fed back to the model to improve it so that it generates humanly pleasing sentences. But by doing that, and in order to do that, the model actually has emerging capabilities. We realize that it is possible, just even though it was not trained for that, but it is possible to use it to summarize text. You give a text and give me a 5-line summary of it. Or you can change the style of the text. Give it a text, give it to me in a sarcastic mode, or for small kids that the small kid can understand. It can detect the mood of a text or the atmosphere. It can answer some question. You give it a text, you can ask some specific question on that text. It can what we call detect intent. So it can get it seems that it gets a feeling of what you want to do. And in green, that's what we have done. So it follows instruction. Give me this, give me the code of that, and it remembers the different elements. And retrieve general information. So it has somehow a list of those 10 top cities. Now, we don't know if it's true, but at least it can generate a list, and it can generate code and a lot of other stuff. Of course, there are observed problems. This is not magic. And one of the key things is that the model itself alone has problem with facts. It's not trained to find the truth. It's trained to get pleasant text. So we have this phenomenon of hallucination. It basically will state something with a lot of confidence that is totally wrong, totally false. But it's a nice text. So we don't ask it to tell the truth. We ask it to give us nice text. So a quick example here is that someone had an interview with ChatGPT and setting it up in a way that it will play the role of a squirrel. And I encourage you to have a look at that. It's very funny. But here, for instance, one of the questions is, what do you say to people who doubt that you are a squirrel? And he says, I say they should come and see for themselves. And then I'm a squirrel after all. And who doesn't love squirrels? This is very natural. It's totally fantasy, but it's very natural. And of course, also, again, the model itself has a knowledge base that is fixed in time when they stop training it. So the ChatGPT 3.5 is somewhere in 2021 or 22, I forgot. The recent version is still there. And of course, open AI is a misnomer. It should be called closed AI. And so we don't really know what they're doing inside, what they train and so on. But there's a solution for all this. The problem with facts, or if you use proper or good prompting methods, then you can avoid a lot of those questions. Also, if you use a hierarchy of query, so you add, for instance, new being. If you use the edge and you have a function new being, and you can give it a text as a search, it will use ChatGPT or something related to create a few search that are relevant for, then perform a real search, analyze the result of the search, give you a summary of that with the reference of where it found information. So there you have the beauty of the nice interface of a ChatGPT, but also it's anchored in a search of the current situation right now. So anything on the internet can be identified. And of course, a lot of people are starting to integrate those kind of tools or trying to do that. Now let's move to some applications. The first one is, I would say, that's how to integrate this into a large system. So if you have every large company or most companies have some kind of software system, CRM, ERP, these kind of things. And those systems, they still require quite a bit of manual intervention. With generative AI, whether it's ChatGPT type or another model, and the modern techniques of NLP, it is possible to augment the operator efficiency and to understand the semantic, understand the content of what we're writing. And I take here an example of Microsoft, of course, and we control OpenAI now, has announced this co-pilot with different functions. And in supply chain, they are providing this type of application. They say, I'm a sourcing manager. I manage a certain number of supplies. And at a certain moment, there is some news. There is a flooding somewhere in the US. And the system, using traditional method, but also semantic search, identify that it is relevant for me because I have those supplies in my portfolio. Then I can have a look at the article itself if I want to, but also I can ask the model to say, I want to contact that particular supplier, those wind traders, you know them if you do access database, confirm impact on order days and quantity. So I want to prepare an email. And then the system will use a ChatGPT type model to write a text, but not only with some text, but also understanding the order that are in the database for that particular supplier at the moment, and possibly any kind of information you want to have it, and he makes a smooth and quite nice text. Then the operator can have a look and then send it out. In the past, they would have to go and link information from different parts of the database and write the mail themselves, or they would have a template-based type of email that is quite rigid. So this one is actually the next level of that. Another type of application is, and it's maybe a little further in the time, but it really provides a fast prototyping tools for organization. So we've seen that ChatGPT can follow instructions that we give in English. So I'll take an example here. Let's say that we receive emails or receive messages on the service bulletin board or something like that. And I will write instruction, what I want the system to do. I say, so first we tell ChatGPT or whatever model, we give it a role. You are a service agent receiving a message from a customer, and we define what the message is. There's a certain format. I put it between backticks. Then what do? Your job is to analyze the message with the backtick and define the following: 1, 2, 3, 4. The name, the issue faced by the customer, the specific question, and the mood. I want to know whether the customer is unhappy or calm. And I give it 2, calm or emotional, nothing more. And every time I give a name, call is a name, issue, and so on. And then reply in the following format, tac, 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 tac. And do not add any other word or text. These are all just, you could tell someone, some kind of not too smart employee, you could do the same. And then you give it the text that you receive from the website. I'm waiting for my parcel for the last 19 days, and I still don't have information, blah, blah. When will I receive information and sign? And then that's the answer that I received back from ChatGPT. And I use the open source interface, so you can do the same yourself just by doing that. So the name is Alfred, and then mood is calm. Now we use exactly the same instruction, but we change the text. Someone who is a little more pissed off, use a little more flourish vocabulary and has a different name. And here the system says, okay, the name is Siegfried, blah, 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 and the mood is emotional. So you can see how if you have an application that runs big system, you could actually involve much more people in fine-tuning or prototyping or changing, making it really relevant for whoever is on the line without having to learn SAP or another language or SQL for a decade before you can do that. So I do believe that these kind of tools will make that people can create their own mini application as a demo, and then can be taken back to a product organization that will make it for deployment. But it should shorten the cycle and increase the satisfaction of people. And again, that's very recent. Beyond ChatGPT today, that ChatGPT is the best product on the stage, but the technology behind it is almost reached by other models. Originally Brun, which is a little less good, but it's open source, Dolly 2, which is also open source, and more recently, Falcon from Abu Dhabi, make it open, a 70 billion parameter model. Akhil was made available a few weeks ago by Beijing. So basically, those tools are quite amazing if you know where and how to use them. I believe they should be applied to real situations. Just think of something in a way you can ask a question, and together with other tools. If you only use that and you do search, you will have bad experience if you mix it with something else. And it is time now, I think, for everyone to start looking at that seriously, because it will give you a unique edge. And if for private reason you need to use those tools internally, well, then we can go to those open source type of model. Here we are. So no magic, no fear, but don't be too impressive though.
Okay, thank you very much, Etienne. It was a very interesting presentation. Again, just a very quick overview of what the technology is all about. If you have a question for Etienne, go ahead and send your question now using the Q&A button located at the bottom of the screen, and we'll take those questions and the others as we continue the discussion. Before we jump into the questions, I would like to maybe put a poll question on screen and ask all of you to actually give us an answer. So let me launch that poll and explain to you what it's all about. So we're asking you just to tell us what are the biggest challenges you face in adopting or implementing generative AI in your supply chain organization. So you can select as many as you want. And so you can go ahead, tell us whether it's a lack of overall understanding, a lack of user case, maturity issue, data privacy, integration issues, or a lack of skilled personnel, or maybe an unclear ROI from AI investment. So go ahead. We're going to give you a minute just to respond to that. And then I'll get maybe the panelists can also, speakers can see the response, and I'll get you to comment on this at the end of the poll. Okay, so go ahead, yeah. And like I say, if you have any other questions for Etienne or any other question related to generative AI and supply chain, feel free to click the Q&A button located at the bottom of the screen. All right, I think I'm going to close it. Maybe a few more seconds. Go ahead, I'm going to close it. Hurry up. If we can get 100 answers, it would be good. Hold on, people are still responding. Okay, I think the results are pretty fixed now. So let's, okay, some slight difference, but I think we can tell already what are the biggest challenges. So let me close that poll. Okay, so those are the results for all of you to see. I think the number one concern or challenge that they have in adopting or implementing that technology is obviously data privacy and security concern. I think followed by number two, tell me if I'm wrong, you can, everybody can help me here. I think the number two is lack of use case. So yeah, we're gonna talk about this and give you some example about how you can use that technology. Coming third, will it be lack of skills to handle that technology? Okay, and what else we have? Number four would be integration issue, right? So what you guys are thinking when you look at those results?
Yeah, I think Max, I can I'll maybe jump in here to begin. So yeah, I think listening to the client conversations we're having at the moment, data privacy and security is clearly number one for them as well. For mature companies, I think if we look at the era that people are in at the moment, it's very much the post ChatGPT discovery. So they're finding their way, they're discovering. Most of the examples people are testing are based on external freely available data sets, which is very low risk. Now companies are starting to find the use cases using their internal data. They're looking at things like enterprise search, which obviously brings you into contact with your own IT security department. So I think that's where people are at the moment. I think once that is unblocked with some controlled use cases, then we will see a massive uptake in supply chain.
Okay, thank you. Etienne, Julien, Mike?
Yeah, so basically, I think so data privacy security is not just about the data that's being trained from ChatGPT or any generative AI right now. So at the same time, I think the organization may need some kind of a regulatory framework to help to control the avoid misuse of the generative AI, and also to govern the implementation of generative AI as well in terms of the privacy, how the data is being complied with their local regulatory as well. So not only the data is being trained, but also how you can gather data and train additional model as well. So basically, regulatory framework could help. Yeah.
Etienne, Julien?
Yeah, quick one. I find interesting the connection between data privacy issue or concerns and lack of use case. Obviously, we are in experimenting mode, and to test those models, you probably need to submit some data or some information. And if you don't provide like your own practical data, you may not be so clear on the use case. So there's a bit of a chicken and egg. If we can't submit secret data to ChatGPT, then how can we validate a proper use case on our situation? I think that's a loop that we'll discuss further. There's a connection.
Okay, Etienne?
Yeah, if we look at the speed of development of the things, 6 months ago, that would have been the case that we have to use ChatGPT and you have this issue of privacy. It's still the case today. But when we see the speed at which other models are coming, and also how people are fine-tuning a model for their own use, maybe smaller use that you don't have to use is massive. ChatGPT thing, you can use another model smaller that runs on your server or a cloud that you control. So that's, I think within the coming 6 months or 12 months, you will see that people find ways, as Chris mentioned, to go over those issues. But then, of course, the key question is the use case, and generative AI is a fundamental technology. What is use case of a database? What is the use case of Excel? So it requires to play with it, to get its own model of what it can do, and then think which problems in my company I can solve, and then can we partially solve that? So I think the companies really have to think of, in terms of AI, in terms of generative AI, if they want to file. There will be not the off-the-shelf application. Companies will propose products that use it for you off the shelf, that you can use that. But if you want to develop your own thing, you cannot use something off-the-shelf case.
Okay, so there are already questions coming in, and obviously the first one, and we already are talking about it, is the lack of use case. So maybe I'd like to get your opinion about, in which aspect of supply chain do you think this technology of generative AI will be probably the most quickly implemented? What are you seeing happening in the market? And Chris, you mentioned, for example, that people are kind of exploring it, but what kind of direction are they taking, and in which aspect of supply chain management are they more interested in?
Yeah, maybe just briefly then, and I think this is, the distinction of generative AI versus AI ML that people in supply chain have been using for many years, right? So I think, as you described in the introductory presentation, Etienne, it's really the content generation that is the new part of it. So we then think about use cases where maybe additional content generation helps contextualize decisions, so more around decision intelligence, decision insights, which immediately takes you to things like procurement negotiations, maybe forecasting, maybe product development. If we look at the S&OP or IBP cycle, sorry, that's a massive concentration of decision making, within a fixed window. So I see applications where you can have a Gen AI co-pilot, providing context, guiding you, providing external and internal insights. I think if we project forward, years, maybe 5 years, I think we'll see the pivot towards maybe more the voice interrogation of systems, the complete change in the user interface. But I don't think we're there just yet. Okay.
Yeah, Julien, Etienne, Mike, if you could give us some example, because I think people are expecting to hear some example in this session. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting topic. So basically, from what we observed like 3-4 years back then, so people are actually focusing on automations. So mostly all rely on rule-based stuff, right? You can imagine document processing, report generation, that stuff like 4 years ago. But now people are actually looking into more analytical manner, which they want to create smart automation. So they leverage generative that they extract the key data parameters from the documents and automate them. But not only the smarter automation, but also a more advanced analytics in different supply chain functions. Let's say, for example, how the product is designed, how the material is being procured, production distribution, as well as customers. Say, for example, we have one customers as a licensing customers. So they use generative AI to create their toys based on the story of the characters. So not only they propose generative AI propose you the material, the design of the product, but they leverage the generative AI to constrain them with these different supply chain limitations. Say, for example, the cost factors as well. So product design, and as well as inventory management, optimization, route management will be a very, very key area that we are exploring right now. And it will have a very, very significant improvement in this sustainability as well as cost saving.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike.
Maybe just to add a little on that. So as Mike said, until very recently, all the automation systems were based on rules, and I would say it's like the multiple choice question. So you have a certain number of options, and you pick one. That's it. Now with a tool like generative AI, you can have open question, open answers. So you don't have to fix in a very hard, rigid structure. You can start to get an email as it is, or a document as it is, and then extract the meaning out of that and use that meaning. So I think that's a fundamental change, and that can be used to to do search, for instance, in your document database. All companies are sitting of tons of data that they don't know what to do with because they don't have access to it. Okay, now we can start getting that. Then that can be put into the normal systems that exist, but they've been at least partially cleaned up, and you reduce the work of doing that. The second thing also is that once you are at the level of meaning, semantic, whether it's an image, a text, a sound, it doesn't matter. If it's an image that means a cat and a text that means cat, it's the same meaning. So you can start merging things together. And in some businesses, quality control, or I don't know, also in some areas where you can convert something in an image, then you can start thinking of those applications. And ChatGPT-4 is a multi-mode language model. That means you can have images and text at the same time. So this is not for today, that's coming, it's later, but that's the kind of idea, is to generate use cases. Where do I need that information and I need 5 people to read those documents today? Well, you won't need them. You will need them to read the summary, which is much faster.
Yeah, it's a good example on quality control with, basically the image that can be analyzed by those models. Julien, what again are you seeing happening? What kind of direction are your clients, looking into with that technology?
There are 3 main applications I have in mind. Some of them are more or less experimental. The first is consolidating insights. Could be short term. What's going on in the port of Los Angeles? Is there an accident in this particular road that could delay a particular shipment? So bringing some real-time kind of insights to alert the planners also for action. So consolidation of information is definitely a plus, and you can allocate the insights you want in particular countries, on particular road or port or whatever. So zoom into where it could happen and get a feed of insights consolidated on daily or weekly basis. This is more execution. You could do that on a more long-term basis. So main trends. Nigerian market is seeing an inflation boost, so we may see a reduction of our sales in this particular market. Similar kind of consolidation, but for more longer-term decision. Another application I see, and that's where I'm actually trying to deep dive, is decision support. So not just the external facts that could impact the supply chain, but also the internal performance. So bringing all the numbers together, analyzing data, and telling you where are you, what are the risks of issues you may face, how does it compare to previous months. So giving you a bit of a summary of your current performance in a very quick manner, instead of going into SAP and going into very dry and boring tables. You get a clear summary on a daily, monthly basis. And the final one is training, is getting on board new people, having a more smooth integration process where you could have this assistant asking this assistant, where can I find this kind of person? Is this process supposed to be working this way? What can I do if I have an issue there? So having a more execution or operational support to operators or managers. So these are the 3 buckets. Now we can get down into that, but just a quick word on data analytics, data analysis. It was not super, ChatGPT 3 was not really good at that. ChatGPT 4 is actually quite solid. So you can submit quite some data and have a very qualitative summary of it. And that is to me, a very strong game changer, to be able to support decision making, but not with more data, but with the right summary of what is important and what is not.
Okay, thank you very much, Julien. Okay, so we have a lot of questions. I promise that I will give priority to those questions from the audience. So let's jump in, and please, for all of you, give us a quick, concise answer so we can cover as many questions as we can. I'll probably start with that one, because I think that was ranked as the #1 challenge. This is a question from Punya, who's asking, can you address how data confidentiality can be maintained if organizations start using generative AI? Any tips, advice?
You have to do it locally.
Build your own model.
You cannot do it in, yeah, you have to run it. You have to run your own model. You cannot run the OpenAI model unless they run it. So very large companies, they're starting to discuss running that model on the premise of, or at least in the cloud of the client, but you need to be very big to get that.
Okay, Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's exactly the same, right? It's controlling which systems you integrate with, and also bring it into your domain and your policies and so on. So very, very similar.
Okay, Mike?
Well, I will have this very typical saying, like 4E structure: educate, empower, evaluate, establish, evoke, clear policy. But in terms of privacy, and because we all know every single organization, the teams that staff actually using it, but we couldn't see organization, especially in APAC country, they don't encourage people to use it right now. The reason why is they don't have a very solid, comprehensive regulatory framework for them. So there are some kind of a guideline for them to say, for example, info security guideline, or how data is being used, what data could be trained to the additional custom models for the generative AI. So this is something that we need to work on, and to tell our your department, supply chain department, your IT department on governing those generative AI adoptions.
Is there a way to query a model like ChatGPT-4, for example, and tap into the universal knowledge that technology has developed without actually giving confidential data? Can you ask a company question, a specific company question on your supply chain operation, but without taking the risk of sharing that data? Is there any protection here?
So just a quick example, Max, all the solutions that you've seen in the past maybe 5 years focusing on track and trace, the transport movements, the ocean freight movements, a lot of them already provide that external data and context and disruptions and events, and they feed that to the user. So again, that's very much a set of use cases that's outside of the boundary of the company and doesn't really influence or impact operations in any way.
Anybody else? Etienne, Julien?
One of the ways that the confidential data, by definition, you cannot send it on the system, because then it's out, unless you accept that. Of course, the risk is low because you don't have human intervention in there, but you don't have a zero risk. But you can divide your application in modules and then use the ChatGPT backend or API to do a certain part of the work and the rest locally. Some people use what is called the embedding for some data. So they send something, not all of it. They receive back a representation of that text, and then they use that internally. So there's different ways, but these are hacks. If you are able to run a smaller model on your premise, that would be much better, of course. And I personally believe that within the 6 months or the 9 months coming, it's going to go that way, because it's not available otherwise.
I would differentiate the external information, the public information that the ChatGPT has, which you can query and ask for and get insight from the external world. Nothing worrying with this. As long as you start exchanging specific insights of yours, that's a danger. So that requires to internalize. I guess the answer is pretty straightforward.
There are a few questions related to planning. So maybe we could talk about this. Nilesh is asking, what is the cost of implementing generative AI use case in conjunction with planning and order management system? Maybe you could, each of you, talk briefly about the application around supply chain planning, which I think is one of the most interesting one for Gen AI. Yeah.
Just a quick one. I would not expect generative AI to do your planning by itself. It may make sense of some of the scenarios or data that you have. It will give you directions, but it will not do the actual planning. So it could be a way to communicate planning scenarios to a broader audience. Could be a way to summarize the context, the current planning performance, and so on in a nice way. But the action of planning is finding the right trade-offs between different objectives, and this generative AI is not built for that. This is more the classic AI, which would actually take over and try to formulate an optimum. Gen AI is a layer on top that gives a bit more better user experience, but practically will probably not change the game of the core of planning process.
Step in if you want to comment, otherwise we can move on to the other question.
So maybe just to give like the example, the two examples with instruction, every time you ask that, you have one instruction, one text, and you send that to the API, it will be a fraction of $1. So it's a really low value. So you can do a lot of them before it starts costing you quite a bit of money. So it's more the fixed investment to find the prompts and this kind of thing that would be expensive. And at the moment, the real cost of doing simple action are relatively low.
Okay. There's a question about the accuracy. So this is from Alex, who's asking, do you see any way to improve the fact accuracy of ChatGPT?
Yes and no. No for the language model. Language model, by definition, cannot. However, it's wrapped in something else that does it. Like the example of Bing, they use that together with something else. So that's the hierarchy of tools. Then you can have a system that has high accuracy, but it does not rely. ChatGPT as such, the language model is not a search tool. That's you have to put that. It's a text management thing.
Okay. Step in if you want to, again, feedback. There's an interesting question from, again, Punya, who's asking, how do you envision change in the role of consultants after generative AI adoption by organization? I think it's a critical question for many of you. So are you still going to be here 10 years from now?
Of course.
Being a consultant,
yeah, maybe
do it as well.
Yeah, okay. I was just going to say, I think I had the same question at the kind of point of blockchain, the point of automation, and so on. So I think we'll still be here. I think it gives us an additional toolkit that we can bring to clients. And I wouldn't expect to be spending a lot of time gathering and reading documents and analyzing issues. I think we can accelerate a lot of that stuff working together. Okay.
So still human consultant will be here. Etienne, Julien, and Mike, you guys agree?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. It will save us some time as consultants, let's say. So we either make more money or reduce the fees, but there will still be a need for human brain to make sense of complex problems.
Okay. There's a question. Okay. There's no question interesting also. Do you think generative AI can be used for data generation to train the models?
It is being used. Synthetic data are used to train some models. And in some case, we have high level. It is pretty advanced. It's not a mainstream thing. But you can use synthetic data that are generated by models to do that. Mainly more at the image side than the text, I would say. But I think at the text there's some work on that.
Yeah, so basically I have some personal use case on that as well, but it is not directly training the model, but generative AI, especially GPT-4. So we use it to extract key data from the string of text. We label the text through GPT because it is told that it's trained by 100 millions parameters. So it has an intelligence to extract data as well as to label the data correctly. But I would say my personal testing on that extractions or labeling is like more around like 70–80% correct. So compared to human. So I think may not be a good suggestion to train another kind of like good models compared to GPT right now, I would say.
Okay. There's a comment also from, which is interesting, from Stephanie, who say, would it be a dream to use AI in customer service? It could be also in sourcing or in supply chain, department, to reply to customers or suppliers' requests in near future. The purpose would be to avoid having too many people dedicated to that. So do you think that this is coming, where communication by email could then be replaced?
Yes, at least heavily facilitated.
And I think this is what Microsoft is doing with their Copilot also, absolutely. Right? They try to bring a Copilot into all their applications, including Outlook, for people to augment and automate the reply and communication process, right?
And that's for me the most obvious application. And you can define the style, you can define bullet points of what you want from the database, and then you make it a readable text to someone according to a certain style.
Yeah, Chris?
Yeah. The conversations are already happening with clients in the area. So in the customer service, customer and consumer interaction. So not just the where's my order, but also, tell me more about the product, tell me about the heritage of the product, the traceability and so on. And then on the procurement side, so classic things like spot tendering, that's always been ripe for automation. I think this gives a new set of capabilities to do that in a more natural way.
Julien, Mike?
Well, I think in terms of customer service, it's not being used as a chatbot But basically, there are still agents answering the customers, but actually the agent is actually leveraging a GPT on the back to pack some of the kind of like knowledge database instantly, so that you can give a more customized answers to the customers right now. So very lots of adoptions in omnichannel customer service with the manual agents behind, but actually using ChatGPT as a way to do more personalizations customer service.
Okay. There's Julien?
No, it's just definitely the best type of application for human interaction. So customers and suppliers, definitely one of the first applications of those models. I think Salesforce is also trying. Everyone is trying to integrate that in their solution. So it's coming, definitely.
Okay, there are a lot of questions, and every time I ask one, there are two popping up. So I'm trying to keep up with this. But there's an interesting question here from Hoda, who's asking, do you think the tendency to use on-premise models and data for generative AI will reverse movement to cloud? Interesting question.
I think the cloud on-premise.
Your own model could be in the cloud.
Yeah, exactly. But the cloud you control, not the cloud someone else controls.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay.
So little chance it will change. It's probably even better to keep it in the cloud, because you'll have power that is more flexible than having on-premise servers. Yeah. So it could accelerate the cloudification of the market, actually.
A question from Kesavan asking, if I use AI in my application, is there any possibility the model can copy the data or method and use that in another company within the same domain?
It's not copying the data, actually. It's difficult to explain in a couple of words, but it's a representation of the data. It's the same thing as when we read a text. We don't have a copy of that text in our brain, but we have a memory of that text in our brain as some kind of concept in the brain. It's the same thing. So you cannot say it's copied. It's learned. It has a representation there as a map with different points of representing different things. So it's very philosophical debate about is that a copy or not. I think it's as much a copy as if you see a text, then you leave it there, and then in the evening you rewrite it.
Okay. There's another question which is interesting also. This is anonymous, but will LLM be able to be used to control existing supply chain software with natural language? And that's a good question, because a lot of the supply chain tools right now are not always super user-friendly. So will that technology help the common user to actually make the best of those tools and solutions? Yeah.
I think the whole.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike. Go, Mike. No, go ahead. Go.
Yeah. So basically, I think it depends. Yes and no. It depends on what software you're using right now. Yeah. So I would say there are still lots of software. They are still relying on their own analytics functions. Like the big brands, they're not still very close with in terms of API to connect with another third-party Gen AI right now. So it really depends on the modular design of your ERP or software, supply chain software. And at the same time, whether that software has the capability to get the response from after you get a prompt from the Gen AI as well. So it's just kind of like integration issues for me. Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, so I think we're in such an established world of the supply chain tech. So, with MRP, ERP, it's been around for 40 years in its current sort of structure. I think it would take a massive pivot in the industry to become, something like voice-led as a UI. And I don't think we're there yet. So I don't see any of the big houses investing massively in completely transforming. I think there'll be add-ons in terms of bits of Gen AI to support existing solutions.
Okay. There's a question from Ricardo. Again, we say, you mentioned Gen AI will not replace supply chain planning, but rather add a layer on top of data to help guide decisions. Are there any AI applications that can be used for autonomous planning? If so, are they any good or still early stage? It would be interesting to also to gain use knowledge on them and see the execution strategy as a benchmark for our own. So autonomous planning. Julien?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm focusing on. So to my knowledge, there's no autonomous planning as such. It could be a marketing message that lure people, but there's nothing practically fully autonomous. The issue in planning is this trade-off, and this trade-off comes with priorities, and these priorities come from usually the top, from CFO, CEO, and they are stuff that you can't just ask a model to decide for yourself. So this input from is actually a must and remain a must. What we're trying to do is to use this interface with the language model and allow the user to ask scenarios. What if this happens? Tell me if it's a good option. Can you propose me an alternative for this particular case? If my market drops, if my factory burns, if my supplier fails, what options do I have? So more an assistant than a fully autonomous system. Autonomous planning will probably come in 5-10 years, but nothing short term in my view.
Okay. There's a question from Keroy, which I think is interesting. What effect will this technology have on the future workforce, supply chain profession, in terms of upskilling of current workers and updated curriculum in schools and universities? I think that's a very good question. What's your take on this? How is going to be changing the supply chain profession in the next few years?
I think maybe a bit controversial, Max, but I think, clearly there are some people that are going to be on board with this and on top of it, and there are some that are going to be left behind. So I think we'll probably see a separation in terms of, the kind of skilled statistical knowledge type work which requires this type of capability, and then maybe others which are more executional. And we're starting to see that split and development of new capabilities, new skills already.
Mike, Etienne, Julien, your take on this?
We don't have a use case right now that AI could sell the product, but basically we have a pretty much many use cases in how AI could really help in selecting supplier to negotiate the terms with them. So they have done lots of benchmarking in terms of supplier, comparing the financial records, comparing their social responsibility metric as well. So it's a way that it's kind of like come up with a better deal with their supplier, so as to have an impact on your P&L as well. So yeah. Okay, Etienne.
And maybe a little more macro level. There was a study from an American economist specializing in the impact of technology, Eric Brun, and they analyzed 850 jobs in the US that have a list of tasks. And they looked at each task, which one is prone to be replaced by AI. In the case, it was a little before generative AI, but I think it's still valid. And their conclusion is it's not a single job where that will not be impacted. That's the first thing. But the second thing is there's also no single job where all the tasks will be replaced. So I think it's like Chris said, it's a way of adapting and making flourish our strength and not try to hang on those things the computer can do better than us.
Okay, Julien, what's your take on this quickly?
Yeah, I think the future professional will be having a more versatile range of responsibilities because of this assisting power of Gen AI. There's also, I think, what I've seen over the last few years since I'm in supply chain is that training is a bit of an issue. There's very little company have proper training in logistics, supply chain, warehouse management, and so on. This becomes available through internal model you could develop. Harvard has developed a for this to learn. So we kind of things allowing people to move from a responsibility to another without having the fear of having to discover everything and having an assistant that could drive them toward new roles. So I think more agile workforce, more empowered to evolve across the organization, and that's quite exciting.
Okay, so I think the final advice would be that you need to start really looking and learning it if you want to stay, in your career 5 or 10 years from now, because obviously that technology will have a big impact. Okay, so that's the end of our session. I'm very, very sorry. We're not going to be able to take all those questions. We had more than 40 questions being asked during that. So, we won't be able to answer all of them. I want to apologize to those who have typed their question. But the good news is that we have a group on WhatsApp which focus on supply chain AI. And after this event, I will invite you to join us on WhatsApp, and you guys can continue asking your question. And obviously, hopefully we will have an ongoing discussion on the topic. The other thing also I want to mention is that we are going to be doing more of those roundtables, more of this discussion, because clearly the technology is here. It's transforming a lot of things. I think for me, in 25 years in supply chain, I've never seen such a technology with such a deep impact on our profession. So we're going to continue having a dialogue, a debate on that technology, and probably we will have another event taking place on that same topic, again with your questions in August. So I'll keep you posted, and we will let you know about this. So please join us on WhatsApp and come back again during the summer and continue the discussion. I want to thank you again, Mike, Chris, and Etienne, and Julien for being with us. I will invite you again for the next discussion. Thank you. It was great. And we had a lot of people joining us today. Obviously, the topic is hot, and we'll be back again. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Nice.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.